Greetings, book lovers everywhere, and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm E-Train. I'm a 13-year-old literacy advocate, podcast host, and kindness promoter. Here on E-Train Talks, I try to shine a bright light on children's authors and all the amazing stories they create. Today, I have the incredible honor of featuring a true master of storytelling, an award-winning quintista of our time. Who's my amazing guest, you wonder? Well, my fellow book lovers, today I'm chatting with the writer who's captivated readers young and old alike. A Newbery Medal winner. Yes, you heard that right, my friends. My guest has earned the highest honor in all of children's literature, the creator of The Last Quintista and her newest profoundly deep middle grade read, Alebrijes. The one and only author, Donna Barba Higuera. Welcome to E-Train Talks, Donna.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. I have been looking forward to meeting you.
I've been looking forward to meeting you as well, and your writing is incredible. So, for those who don't know, Donna is a New York Times best-selling, multi-award-winning author and writer of thought-provoking and culturally rich stories. They explore the past, the present, and future through a writing tapestry of fantasy, mythology, and a dash of sci-fi dystopian storytelling. Donna's stories are multi-layered masterpieces. So, I'm super excited to dive into the first question. In both of your phenomenal middle grade books, The Last Quintista and Alebrijes, your main characters are forced to live dehumanized and fearful lives in dystopian worlds. What draws you to write your stories in these worlds?
So, okay, I've always been a doom and gloom person. Like even as a kid, I was always like thinking like, oh, the worst case scenario of what could happen. But I haven't always written within kind of those dark genres. The first book that I published was Lupe Wong Won't Dance. And that book won the Sid Fleischman Award for Best Book in Humor for the year. So a lot of people will read, and it just happens to be right here. So, but I have a lot of people, and it won the Pura Bel Prey honor. So people would read Lupe, and it's just this really funny character. It's about the chaos of middle school and the
Uh,
mistakes we make. And it is funny, but it's also about learning to forgive yourself and forgive others. And so people would read that book and then they would read The Last Quintista and they're like, wait, what happened? Like you wrote that book and then you wrote this one. And The Last Quintista was just a story idea that had sort of it just dwelled on me for a while. I wrote a short story in about 2011, a long time ago, and it was a writing prompt that was take a traditional fairy tale and make it sci-fi.
oh,
And whenever I'm drawn into sci-fi or dystopia, I write about the things that frighten me the most. And so in this short story, it was just about this, it was like 2 pages long about, I decided to choose Princess and the Pea partially because the story annoyed me so much. It was I don't know if you know the story, but the king and queen are looking for a spouse for their prince, their son. And so they decide the most delicate princess would be the right choice. So they have this stack of mattresses and they put this teeny tiny pea under the mattress. And the most delicate, princess who couldn't sleep at night surely must be the one. And I was like, that is stupid. Like, wouldn't you want a strong princess? And so I wrote a short story, but it was really cheesy. It was the P was the PEA or the pellet of extended animation.
oh,
And and this girl is put into like a cryo state with the P behind her neck, but she's strong of spirit and mind. And so she's awake for this hundreds of years journey to another planet. And when she awakens, society has changed. The things that she valued are no longer there. So there was kind of this scary undertone and it haunted me. And so many years later, I'd finished writing Lupe Wong and I just think it called to me and I decided to work on it. And as I started writing, I started asking myself if I could take in the book, she can take one thing with her. They're like things are very valuable, but like what thing do you value the most? And in her case, it was story. And I think you and I can relate to that because we love books and we love
yeah.
story. And the thing that probably frightens us the most would be someone trying to take those or erase those. And that's what happened. So I wrote about the scariest thing that I could imagine happening to me. And so that's where that story came from. So yeah, it goes dark and it goes scary. And I tell kids all the time, not every book is for every reader. It's okay to close the book and take a break if it's too much for you, or put it down altogether and go find the right book for you. But this book does talk about, those kinds of themes about loss and grief, and so that's where that story idea came from. Alabrijes was a totally different scenario, but oftentimes things come from writing prompts.
Mhm.
But with Alabrijes, it wasn't that. When I finished writing the last Quintista, people were like, "Oh, what happens next? Where's the next book? We want to know what happens next." And I kind of felt like Petra's story arc was done.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to revisit it, but I did wonder, what if somebody survived on Earth hundreds of years later? What would Earth look like? Would
Mm.
anybody have survived? And if they had, what would the world look like? So I kind of created this Mad Max post-apocalyptic world, and plopped my characters down in it. And so that's kind of where that idea came from. And the whole thing with drones was me driving to work. I'm an eye doctor. So during the pandemic, I was like the only one on the road, driving into work. And NPR was talking about these drones made in the shape of animals. And I just thought that was so cool. And I'm like, there's got to be a way to incorporate that into a book. And so that's kind of where, so my ideas, yeah, I love writing prompts, but my ideas can come from anything. I can overhear something on the street and I'm like, that's going in a book. So people can have conversations and they don't even know they're ending up in my book.
Yeah, you're just having a conversation with somebody, and then you're like, your mind just slowly, it's in an entirely another place, and they just like a click of a button.
Right. Right. Yeah. I definitely, even as a kid, had a huge imagination. It was hard to focus. My mind goes all over the place. I just daydream a lot, but oftentimes as a kid, I would go kind of to dark things, and um, I worried a lot. And so I think writing about the things that worry us, books are a safe place. Like kids can read
Right.
them in their bed or read them at school, and it's a safe place to explore what scares us.
I love that, and it's so true. Books
Mm,
are an escape, and I also like what you said, how not every book is for every kid.
right,
Find your
right.
own stories. Mm. So, where were you when you received the word that your book, The Last Quintista, was the Newbery Award winner? I'm sure you're asked this
Oh my
question
gosh.
all the time.
Well, every time it's funny. My life is just a comedy of chaos. So during the pandemic, we really, because I was working so much, and where I was, I had to see patients, so it was hard to get time off. And my family just said, we really want to go somewhere. And everything was kind of opening back up. And so we decided that we were going to take a trip to Hawaii. It's a short flight from where we are. And so we took all the steps, got to Hawaii. We were hunkered down in our condo for a few days, just making sure everything was safe. And then we decided that day we were going to go on a nature hike. However, my publisher had sent me an email earlier in the week, and they said, "We know you're going to be on vacation, but Barnes and Noble wants to have a Zoom call with you on Saturday and Sunday." And I'm like, "On the weekend?" And they're like, "Yeah, it has to do with the paperback version of Lupe Wong Won't Dance." And so I said, "Okay," and doing virtual visits for kids. And I'm like, okay, they know my soft spot. Of course, I'll do it. So I marked out Saturday and Sunday. So Saturday comes around, and granted, I didn't take any nice clothes with me because I was on vacation. So I
Yeah.
had, this one outfit and a scarf, and I just like get ready, and I'm like trying to make myself presentable. And I hop on this Zoom call, and like all these like Latino people are there, and I'm like, wait, what? What's going on here? Is Barnes and Noble, like what? And so it was the Pura Bel Prey committee, and they were telling me that I had won the Pura Bel Prey award. And of course, afterwards, I'm crying, and I get on the phone with my publisher, and we're all on a group call, and we were all so happy. And I said, "Oh my gosh!" I go, "So is tomorrow the real Barnes and Noble meeting?" And they're like, "Yes." So there, next day, get up, put on my same outfit because it's the only one we had, and I hop on this Zoom call, and I realized they didn't have a link. It was a number, and I typed in the number, and the same name popped up from the day before, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm Zoom bombing somebody's moment at the ALA and American Library Association." And so I was about to hang up, and like a ton of faces popped up, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I saw my editor, and he looked a little bit emotional, and it was like this moment where I was like, "Wait, what's going on?" And I said, "I'm really sorry. I think I might be in the wrong spot." And then I saw him, and his name's Thaddeus, or Tad Andraki, was the head of the Newbery committee, and he goes, "No, Donna, you're in the right place. I'm Tad Andraki, and I am the head of the Newbery committee this year." And I felt like there are moments in life where, and I've only had a couple of them. Once was when my mother died, where you feel like there's like the carpet's underneath you, and someone just went and pulled it out from under you. It felt like that. It wasn't a moment of sadness like when my mother died, but it's a moment where you know that your life is never going to be the same. And just like it was this sheet of goosebumps all over me. And somebody, luckily, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but somebody was recording it, and you can see this wave of emotion going over my face, like first disbelief, and then like, oh my gosh, and then just celebration. It was so much fun, and everybody, and I am not a noticer. I didn't even notice that behind every person was the cover of my book. And I'm like, okay. So it was kind of this comedy of errors, but it was just this amazing moment. And, everybody's crying because it emotionally, people who read for these committees read hundreds and hundreds of books, and they're tired. And it's the end of this process. And I don't know. It was just this moment where we just all were celebrating, but also kind of like crossing the finish line of something. So it was a great memory.
Wow. Just hearing you retell it, I feel those wave of emotions too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
It
must have
was,
been like words cannot describe that. I don't know how you
no.
did to.
No, and then I was trying to compose myself before I went out and told my family, because we were going to go on our hike. We decided to do something outdoors, and I like got myself together, and I walked outside, and I said to my husband, who's also a writer, so he knows the gravity of this and what just happened. And I just said, Mark, I called out to him, and he's like, "What's wrong?" Like he thought one of the dogs had died or something. And he comes running, because we left our elderly dogs at home, and he comes running to me, and I tell him, and we were just all in shock, the whole family.
That's amazing. And I know it's 2 years later, but I'm still so happy for you.
Yeah, that's so strange to me. And, just it's passing the torch, like someone else every year. It's an amazing thing that, and on that day that someone else's life is changing, and you're
Mhm.
just so thrilled for them.
Right. And now shifting to your newest book, Alebrijes, which
Hmm.
actually won a Pura Belle Prix honor. So
Hmm.
your main character, Leandro, feels a deep sense of obligation to protect and care for his little sister, Gabby, even when
Right.
times are tough for them. So do you have any siblings or close relatives that you have felt a similar obligation to that helped you when you were writing?
Well, I have an older sister,
Mhm.
and I thought about, she wasn't the most nurturing. She she was kind of, like, there was one time I had to collect, mulberry leaves because I was raising silkworms for a class project. She left me up in the mulberry tree. There was a time she and her friend Missy, like, stuck me down in this closet and forgot about me. So I don't know if that's a nurturing thing, but there were times where she defended me. There was this girl, and, my sister's, this girl was just, she would bully me. I mean, I was a nerdy kid, but I was a little bit shy and quiet, so I think I was an easy target. And this one girl, just every day after the bus, it was just relentless. And my sister did stick up for her, and she just went up to her one day, didn't really pick a fight, but just said, "You're not going to tease my little sister again." And it was one of those moments I'm like, she does like me. So, but, And we like now, my sister is an elementary school principal. She's this amazing person, but we really cared about each other, but not in a nurturing way like Gabby and Leandro, not their relationship. But I do see that in my own children. And I think that was kind of what my older daughter is Elena and my younger daughter is Sophia. And Sophia is like I was, like my younger daughter, very quiet, or was quiet and shy, and just loves the world, loves nature, goes and plants flowers in people's yards without their permission. She just loves the world. And my older daughter, Elena, is a little bit more gruff and just very like, I'm going to say what's on my mind. And someone told me one time, they said, Elena is going through, like, the world is a scary place. And Elena is, it's like a jungle. And Elena has a machete. She's going through the jungle and she's clearing the path for Sophia. And I'm like, that's
Love that.
exactly what it is. And so I kind of think of Leandro and Gabby a little bit that way.
I love that. And it's so important to have a relationship, a good one, or maybe a nurturing, that's great, but also just a loving relationship in any
Right.
way possible.
Right. And it's different for everybody. You just have to figure out what your dynamic is and what works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Cascabellans are very closely connected to their ancestors, those who are from the old world. I believe that learning from those who've come before us and honoring them is so important, and oftentimes it comes up a lot in many religions. In what ways did you try to honor your family stories and heritage in Alebrijes, and how do you feel now looking back upon your writing?
So anytime I'm writing a book, I'm writing it from, there are parts that I'm like, oh, no one's ever going to see this or read this or whatever. So there were stories in Alebrijes I talk about Leandro and Gabby's ancestors, like the story they heard from their mother about Francisco and his wife. And that's actually a true family story. And so I draw from my own family experience. And the Cascabeles are based, I grew up in the Central Valley of California and the San Joaquin Valley. And it's filled with agriculture. And where I grew up, there are also oil fields. And so I drew from that experience. And my family, many of them had been field and farm workers, but also worked in the oil fields. And so I have two sides of my family. My mother is white; her family was from Oklahoma, and my dad's side of the family um, were originally, like, they're Mexican American, but they had worked in the fields. And so I just decided to merge, just like I am. I'm like, okay, I get to decide who makes it in my post-apocalyptic Mad Max world. So I chose to bring myself. And so I pulled from these experiences of my ancestors, people who had worked in the fields. And I, even writing those scenes, I imagined the interactions that they had with other workers, but also things that my grandmother had told me when she was a young girl, didn't
Mhm.
speak English, her father died, she had to go work in a hotel, and she had these stories that she told with other people who worked there. And I imagined it being very much like that. And so those are kind of the experiences that I drew from. But I also, kind of just studying family history and
Mhm.
where people come from. Some of it you'll never know the stories, but you can imagine what
Yeah.
they could have been. You know the details, where they were born, where they were baptized, when they were married, when they died, and you just kind of imagine that. But I do know some of the stories, and I tried to pull that through as well. Like my great grandfather, his name, he founded San Luis Obispo, and his name was Tomas Higuera, and he was a farmer. And so, like, some of the stories I heard or read, my grandmother read from a diary from his wife, and I learned things that way. But it's hard. History's hard because we lose things, so we have to keep
Right.
those stories passed down. And even if my grandmother really didn't read and write when she was little, so you have to listen to the oral tradition of storytelling as well, is so important, and make sure that you preserve those stories. And I tell kids when I go to school visits, I go, we all have them. It's not just me because I have this family history. We all have those, even if it's not, in your specific family, your town has them. We have ghost stories. We've got all kinds of tales. Those belong to you.
My next question for you is kind of continuing with that path. So, we talked a little bit about the Cascabels, but the Pocatelans, they ridiculed them and treated
Mhm.
them like they were less than human, like they were
Yeah.
worthless. However, in spite of these dark and desperate times and the cruelties, the Cascabels stay connected to their past and hold on to a sense of pride. What drives them, even in tough circumstances, to do this?
Um, well, I think throughout history, people who have been made to feel less than still have moments of joy and happiness and things that tie them together. And we need to not think that all of it was tragic, because there were, you know, moments where people bonded with one another and had happy times and told jokes. Like, there's a balance in life, and we need to not think that everything was so destitute and horrible. And I think of where I grew up, and you too, if you're from Sacramento, we see around us in the fields, and it wasn't so long ago that, and my family were part of those where they would work in the fields and they weren't really treated well.
Mm,
And so I wanted to pull that into this book and show how they were thought of and treated. But I also wanted to show how family units, even in this book, not everyone's related, but they bond together because they have to. And they take parts of their culture, and that's also what bonds them in a way. And they hold on to those things, and they do some of it in secret, which is exactly what people have done throughout time. And people in power sometimes were afraid of people who had these bonds, and so they tried to erase them. And I was trying to show that you can't. Like, people will find a way.
mhm.
Even if you try to erase it, they will rediscover it at some point. That's what happens. And hopefully, there enough time has not passed where they forget those things altogether. But if people are given the opportunity, they will, and they will bond. And I just wanted to show that there can be happiness, and there can be joy in those moments that seem like they're downtrodden.
I love that. And these bonds, they're what drive us. They're what connect us to our
Mhm.
ancestors, to each other. And
Right.
I love that you described them. You described them beautifully in your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your books also feature prominent and powerful themes like hope and resilience, and I love that so much. Why is it important for you to highlight these ideas?
Some people ask me, they go, what genre is this? And I'm like, oh, it's hopeful apocalypse. It's like the worst thing has happened, but you always have to have hope. I mean, if it's just, if someone is just, if it's one tragedy after the other and things keep happening, it's hard to keep reading. As a reader, you
Yeah.
want moments where there's a moment of hope and a moment of promise where something good is going to happen, and you hope that they can triumph. And so I'm really cautious without like layering it in, so the reader knows, but also knows that the main character has done something that has allowed them to have this triumph or this hope for something more. Like, it doesn't come for free. People have to work, they have to sacrifice for those things. Um and I wanted to show that. But yeah, it was writing those. It's not easy though when you're writing those moments for characters where something bad is going to happen. My editor's like, "You have to make this worse." And there was a scene in the book where I did not want to write it. I had to go to a public place to write it. And he said, "You got to show this. You have to show it." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm a big scaredy cat." So I didn't want to write it. So I went to a public place and I was writing it. And then I thought, "Oh, for sure they're not going to put that in there." And sure enough, they left it in. And so it's I'll tell you when we're off camera what it is, so if people haven't read it, when they get to that point, they'll go, "What? Oh, I know for sure this is what she was
Yeah.
talking about."
Yeah, no spoilers, everybody.
Yeah, no spoiler.
So, my next question for you is more about The Last Quintista.
Mhm,
So, a memory purge affects all the passengers on board a ship leaving for a new world except Petra.
mhm.
Memories are definitely a big part of The Last Quintista, and legacy as well. Are these messages that you hoped readers would take away from The Last Quintista? And what are some other themes that you weaved into it? I know we're talking a lot about themes, but there's so many
Yeah.
layers to your books.
Yeah, and the last Quintista, it's funny because I think writers, when we're writing books, we don't even realize what we're putting into them until we're done. And then we realize not only something that maybe we were going through in our life, but where, we see themes that we didn't realize. And in the last Quintista, like I was like telling you earlier, a lot of it was about what we love the most and what threatens that when they try to erase story. What I didn't know at the time when I was writing this book was that we were just, because I wrote this book years ago, we were just on the verge of this era of book banning. And it just happened. I hit the right note at the right time. It was, but not on purpose. But it is something that a lot of us fear, is just having the freedom to read what we want to read. And in this case, something bad happens. But there are a lot of other themes within the book. The dangers of groupthink, the dangers of just conforming to whatever anyone says,
Mhm.
um, the importance of diversity. There's so many things about this book that when I was writing it, I don't think I realized really what I was doing. My background is in science, so you can't help but those things kind of being woven within the book as well. But when I was done writing it, I was like, "Wow, that was a complicated book." There was a lot that went into this book, and, a lot of people use it in schools and communities for their one book, but they use that also because there's so many different topics that it touches on. There are so many workshops. I'm trying to get them all consolidated and put on my website, but there's so many workshops you can do around topics in the book. But, yeah, I think as far as the book itself, it went to places I wasn't expecting, and a lot of them had to do with family and, what each member of a family and what each relationship with family members brings as well. So Petra has all these different facets of people and people she's lost, and we get to see that, and there's many moments where it's really sad, and again, I would be crying in a coffee shop and people are going, what's wrong with that poor woman? She's right. But yeah, I think that the themes came about naturally. If I said, okay, I'm going to write a book that's going to be about this and this, it never comes off, it doesn't come off as being sincere or genuine. So I just write the book and then see what happens. And at the end, I'm like, oh, this is what I was maybe working through subconsciously.
Yeah, and I love that because you can't just have a set plan because that kind of takes away from the authenticity, the beauty of the book, and
Right.
what it
Right.
becomes is what truly matters.
Absolutely. I've been asked recently, I had to write a synopsis for a book.
Mhm.
Which is, if you ask a writer to write a synopsis or like a step map, it's like the thing we hate. It's harder than writing the book. So I'm writing it and I give it to my editor and my agent and I said, just so you know, it's not going to end up here. This this is just kind of you're just getting a like a little bit of an idea for this. It's the book always ends up so different than what I intend.
Yeah, and that's what makes stories amazing. They're always in
Right.
twists and turns, both in the writing process and when you're actually reading them.
Right. The best, what is it? The best laid plans. So things just don't always go as you think they are.
So now it's time for a question that I've been really excited to ask. So,
Mhm.
growing up, your grandmother told you many stories that you've kept with you and have inspired your writing, tales of old from your culture and from her life. So, would you mind sharing one of your personal favorites with us?
Sure. I love this question, and there are lots of those stories, but one specifically that I think stories connect us, and so this is a story. Like once I tell you this story, it's going to follow you for the rest of your life. You may not remember where you heard it. You may not remember it was me, but you will remember the story and take it with you. But when my grandmother lived in the middle of the desert, in this tiny little house in the middle of the oil fields. It was kind of creaky and falling down, and there were coyotes, and she had chickens and sheep and pigs and goats. And it was just the most magical place in the world to me. And it was just this rundown little house. But we would sit on her back porch, and at night, and sometimes she would build a little campfire, and other times we would just look at the stars and she would tell stories. And um and in the last Quintista, the first chapter is absolutely me with my grandmother out on the back porch. That chapter wasn't even there in the beginning. So it's a moment where I get to go back and revisit that time with my grandmother. So when I was a little girl, we would go out, and I wonder if I don't know if I brought it in here. It's a we would go out and she would look at the moon, and if it was a full moon, she'd say, "Oh, do you see el conejo in the moon?" Which means the rabbit in the moon. And I would look up and go, "Oh yeah, I see the rabbit." I did not see the rabbit. I like wanted to see the rabbit and I wanted to make her happy, but I did not see a rabbit in the moon. And she always would say that, and and I would search and search, and even when I was an adult, I would go, "Where is that rabbit?" And so I started researching the rabbit in the moon, and
Mm.
I found a story, and I don't even know if she knew the whole story. However, she heard it from somebody, probably passed down in the oral tradition of storytelling. So Quetzalcoatl was this great god,
Mhm.
and he is the feathered serpent god, and he looked down on Earth, and he thought Earth was amazing and beautiful, and he wanted to see it himself. So he came down to Earth, but to come down, he had to come as a human, and he needed food and he needed sustenance, but he didn't realize that. So he was starving and he was dying of thirst, and he was going to die. And El Conejo, the rabbit, saw him, and this he saw this mighty god, but this tiny creature hopped up to Quetzalcoatl and said, "I see that you have come to Earth. You didn't realize your mistake. I want you to live. I want you to experience Earth. So I'm offering myself. If you can eat me and you will survive, you'll have sustenance, and then you can see Earth." And Quetzalcoatl said, um, "You know, I am not going to eat you. But you are the bravest of all creatures I've encountered. And because you were so brave, I am going to make you immortal." And so he took El Conejo and he threw him up to the moon where he landed. And that's where he is in the moon. So now we have this great thing called Google where you can go Google these stories. And now I know where El Conejo is. And when I tell this story to students, I can be talking about anything. And there you can see some students who might be like meandering, and then boom, they want to know the story and they're zeroed in on the story. And that's what stories do for us. And so I know what that rabbit looks like, and I show them the slide where the rabbit is. And I know now that every kid that I've told this story to, they're going to be my age one day, and they're going to be looking up and they're going to know and say, "Oh, there's El Conejo." They may not remember the story or where they heard it, but they're going to be looking for it when there's a full moon. And now you are too. There's going to be a full moon. You're going to be, "Why am I looking for a rabbit?" But that's what stories do. And so that's one of those stories that just stuck with me. And we all have them. Like we hear parts of stories, and we don't know why. So anyway, there's one.
I love that story so much, and I cannot wait for the next full moon because I'm just gonna be staring looking for El Conejo.
Yeah, you'll find him.
I know I will. So, do you have any stories in the works that you can share or any ideas for stories that you'd like to explore writing in the future that you can talk about?
Yeah, I think there's one I'm safe to talk about. So I wrote again. Oh, so you talk about stories of my grandmother. When I was a kid, my grandmother, Mexican folklore can be kind of messed up, and she would say like, "Go to bed, go to bed, or El Cucuy's gonna come get you, or eat your dinner, or El Cucuy's gonna come eat you." Well, then of course El Cucuy's like the Mexican boogeyman, and
Mm.
it's not like the boogeyman we know, where you don't really know what he looks like. Like El Cucuy's hairy and has bloody fangs and claws. It's horrifying to a little child. So of course, then you can't sleep because you're afraid El Cucuy is going to come eat you. So there was a writing prompt. Like most of my stories said, and I was learning to write picture books. And it said, take the thing that scared you the most as a child and make it adorable. And so I thought, well, there is no way to make El Cucuy adorable. So I wrote this story about El Cucuy and his boy Ramon, and Ramon's moving to a new town and a new school, and he's afraid. And suddenly El Cucuy isn't so scary anymore. So I wrote a picture book, which is here.
Yeah.
Show you. It says El Cucuy is scared too. And now it's become like this back to school books. Principals read it to teachers, and teachers read it to kids about kind of how we're all afraid, like going back to school. And then there's another one that just came out that's it's Navidad El Cucuy.
Mm.
So um my editor at Abrams said, would you want to explore this in an older format? So we're kind of writing uh gonna write it as a middle grade, and I don't know exactly where it's gonna end up, if it's gonna be like a chapter book or like a small novel, but I'm having so much fun and just laughing hysterically while I'm writing it. So it's gonna be more of a fun book than a scary book. But so I'm working on that amongst some other projects. But my ideas come all the time. I have so many ideas. I will never have a lack of, you know, material or something to work on. And I never know, like, sometimes I look at notes, I'm like, "What a weird idea. Where'd that come from?" And then other times it makes sense, but sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I cannot wait, and your El Cucuy stories, they sound like perfect read alouds for classrooms and for anywhere. I cannot
It's
wait.
cool. It's cool too, like, they're like, when I was a kid, I thought I was the only one with an El Cucuy, and when I go to schools and kids are like, "Ah," like, they know they know, I'm like, "Oh, they're still doing that to poor children?" So, kids know, Latino kids are like, "Oh, El Cucuy or El Cuco," they know who he is.
Yeah, and now I'm sad, but that this is the final question of the interview that's coming up.
Oh,
I know, and but I'm also kind of excited because this is the question that everybody that I've interviewed has answered, and no pressure or anything, but I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer. So, if you could be or meet any literary character, you could be or you could meet your favorite author, or it could be your favorite book character. Who would it be and why?
okay, there's a couple. Oh my gosh. So maybe Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables, but I probably more so Lucy, what's Lucy's last name? From The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Lucy something Siev. She's the youngest sibling.
I can look
Lucy
it up.
from the Chronicles of Narnia. Um and I
Pavents,
guess say again?
Pavensi.
Yes, that's it. Um, I think Lucy, because she never lost faith. Like, she always believed in Aslan, and, like, her imagination never ceased, and we would be on this same wavelength. I guess I think if somebody I'd wanna meet is somebody who I could totally see myself being friends with. I've always wanted friends, and I think Lucy and I would be good friends because we just believe in, you know, people and things that others don't, and seeing the best in others. So I think, even with sometimes to our detriment, but I think Lucy, like, I'm talking about her like she's real.
I mean,
So
book characters are basically real. They're real in our heads, and they're
they
real
are,
to
they
me.
are. Yeah.
And
What about you? Has anyone ever asked you?
that is a very good question. I think
Sorry, I put you on the
no, no,
spot.
it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I think Lucy's a great answer, but I don't wanna just say the exact same answer. Just gonna look to my bookshelf for a sec.
And you would probably go through your books and go, "Oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, that one." Like,
Yeah.
they become parts of our family. Like, characters, we grow to really love them. But yeah, Lucy would be cool.
Mhm. And I think I might wanna meet Ellie from Starfish. Um,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think because, even with all, like, doubts and stuff, she ends up, being sticking up for herself and believing, so that's a good answer.
I'm not just saying this for the interview, but I would definitely wanna meet Leandro and Gabby. They are
Me too. I think Gabby would be interesting. She's a little spicy one. She just, she would be a fun little sister, but also one that you just shake your head at and go, "Oh my gosh, she did it again." So, um,
yeah, she would be an amazing person to me, and if I was a big brother, I would want her to be my little sister.
same. Yeah, same. I wished I'd had a younger sibling, but yeah, she would be a fun one. Always entertaining, I think, too.
Yeah. So, This has been such a fantastic day. I feel so lucky that I had the chance to talk to you. Getting the chance to talk to you, to writing heroes like you, it's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me.
Thank you so much for asking me. I have had a blast. This was wonderful.
Me too. And everybody, I hope you'll find a copy of Donna's newest gorgeous read, Alebrijes, and dig in. It is chef's kiss amazing.
Uh,
All of her
Thank
books
you so
are.
much.
And
Thank you.
be sure to check out our website at dbhiguera.com. I can also put a link in the description. So, it's all the time that we have for today. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Until next time, gotta stay safe, keep reading. And by keep reading, I mean keep reading Donna's books. They are phenomenal. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.